At 23, she became an unmarried mother to care for her daughter. She worked 3 jobs daily. By day, she was a supermarket cashier. By night, a movie theater ticket taker. In the early hours, she delivered newspapers. Yet she never lost her passion for life. She kept striving toward her dream of becoming a filmmaker. But when she confidently walked into an interview, the interviewer discovered she hadn't finished college. "Why did you drop out just 1 semester short?" Haisu's glow dimmed instantly, yet after a brief silence, her eyes flashed with resolve. "I became a mother," she declared proudly. "I had to leave school to raise my child alone. Now that my 6-year-old is starting elementary school, I finally have time for stable work." The interviewer cut her off, closed her resume, and told her to wait for a call. Seeing fresh flyers plastered on the door, Haisu disdainfully tore each one down. The moment she entered, the cluttered room hit her. Unwashed dishes piled in the sink, her daughter's toys strewn carelessly about. She set down the cake, changed her coat, and immediately began cleaning. But a sudden insect startled her into a flustered mess. The cup in her hand crashed to the floor. It took a moment for her to calm down from the shock, but just as she began picking up the shards, she finally broke down completely and burst into tears. Why was life so terrible? There were always endless flyers to tear down, a room that needed cleaning every single day. Even washing a cup could end in it shattering. Just then, her mother returned home after picking up her daughter from school. Haisu quickly tried to wipe away her tears, but her mother still noticed something was wrong. As her mother approached with concern, Haisu hurriedly stopped them from getting closer. But tears of despair cannot be stopped by hands alone. Watching her daughter break down, her mother came over to help clean up together. She told Haisu it wasn't her fault, it was because the cup was cheap that it broke. The sorrowful atmosphere shifted with a call from the company where she had interviewed. Haisu unexpectedly learned she had signed on to a debt of 1 billion won. When the creditor tracked her down, she discovered her boss had absconded with the money. The boss had promised her a producer role. In a moment of confusion, she signed the guarantee agreement. Now this debt fell squarely on her shoulders. Haisu remembered clearly signing for a 70 million won investment. But Jae-hwan, the head of the finance company, ignored her pleas. His subordinate even accurately recited details about Haisu's mother and daughter, warning that if the money wasn't repaid within 2 weeks, everyone connected to her would suffer. When Haisu stormed into the boss's home, the place was already in shambles. Only a summons notice remained on the table, alongside a copyright contract used as a coaster for instant noodles. Upon scrutinizing the contract, Haisu discovered it was a multi-year agreement, whose signature was obscured by smudges. Enraged, she exploded on the spot, but no amount of cursing solved the problem. Now she had to scramble for investments. But word of the boss's disappearance had already spread. Their company was now shunned within the industry. Even the director they'd secured for a project abandoned them, switching to another production house. With no other choice, Haisu returned to the office and ordered her colleagues to sell off anything of value. At least they could scrape together enough to pay the staff. Unexpectedly, one colleague discovered the script. It turned out to be the work of Miho, the top-ranked writer. Comparing it to the contract they found earlier confirmed it was the same script, so she carefully wiped it with a wet wipe, finally revealing the writer's signature in full. Now, if someone would invest, they could successfully pay off their debts. They approached their creditor, Jae-hwan, presenting the script and their vision. But Jae-hwan didn't believe anyone would invest in them. Unexpectedly, Haisu asked him to invest. This coincidentally aligned with Jae-hwan's own thoughts. He decided to give Haisu a chance. If she could secure Miho as the screenwriter, and the popular star Taejun as the lead actor, he would agree to invest in Haisu. But Taejun, being a top-tier actor, was incredibly difficult to approach. The most awkward part was that Taejun and Haisu had almost become a couple in their youth. So Haisu decided to find Miho first. That very night, she sent the writer an email. To her surprise, she actually received a reply and an invitation to meet that afternoon. When Haisu arrived full of anticipation, she discovered the writer was none other than her ex-boyfriend Young-hyuk. The kicker? She was the one who had dumped him back then. On Henny's first day at her new school, she witnessed a classmate being bullied. Some milk was splashed on Henny too. The student who threw the milk stood behind her, smirking with a look of careless schadenfreude. Henny looked at the silent boy in front and realized he must be a frequent target of bullying. She stood up and scanned the surrounding classmates, only to find everyone indifferently accustomed to it. But she wasn't prepared to stay silent. Suddenly, Haisu received a call from her daughter's school. They said Henny had caused trouble on her first day of transferring. Haisu rushed to the school in a panic. While asking for directions to the conference room, she failed to notice her daughter's homeroom teacher, Hyun Woo. The moment she appeared, Hyun Woo became ecstatic. He even followed her closely. When Haisu found her daughter in the conference room, she learned Henny had punched a classmate. She immediately apologized to the other parent. As her daughter tried to stop her, she insisted her daughter apologize alongside her, but the parents refused forgiveness and demanded a school violence committee meeting. Realizing the consequences, Haisu immediately knelt on the ground. Despite her desperate pleas, the parents remained unyielding. They even suggested the father should handle it, demanding Henny's dad come out to discuss. But Haisu was an unmarried mother. The boy's parents sneered, implying her lack of upbringing was no surprise. They paid no heed to Henny standing right beside her. At that moment, Haisu, as a mother, finally erupted. She declared that she herself was the girl's father, without giving the other parents a chance to respond. Haisu took her daughter's hand and left the school. On the way home, Henny felt deeply wronged, but Haisu had no mind to listen to her explanations. Suddenly spotting a debt collector, she hurriedly pulled her daughter away to hide. This, however, led Henny to misunderstand her mother. She blamed her mother, saying that giving birth to her was a mistake. Her daughter's words cut Haisu to the core. Only when the bullied classmate came to explain that Henny had actually defended him by hitting the bully, did Haisu finally understand why her daughter had been wronged. After work that evening, she went to her daughter's room, heartbroken. She took her daughter's hand and held her tightly without a word. But Henny, pretending to sleep, understood her mother's heart. The next day, while Hyunwoo was on the bus, he suddenly spotted Haisu running after it. He quickly asked the driver to wait a moment. Hyunwoo waited nearby, smiling, but Haisu, boarding the bus, didn't notice him until the bus suddenly started, sending her crashing into Hyunwoo's arms. As she apologized, she suddenly realized the person beside her was her daughter's homeroom teacher. She hurriedly greeted her warmly. Then the bus slammed on the brakes, and she crashed into Hyunwoo's arms once more. The double collision left her mortified, but before she could apologize this time, Hyunwoo spoke first. Only when Haisu looked closely did she suddenly recall who he was. They had actually known each other from university. While cleaning the family-run bathhouse, Haisu had unexpectedly found Hyunwoo there, his clothes taken by a friend. After a brief exchange, she learned Hyunwoo was actually her junior. They had become good friends back then, but Haisu was reluctant to acknowledge him now, because Hyunwoo had discovered her secret all those years ago. Yet, seeing the man smiling foolishly out the window, Haisu opened it anyway. Hyunwoo assured her, "Don't worry, I'll take good care of Henny." Haisu never imagined the boy who used to follow her around would now be her daughter's homeroom teacher. This was simply too much for her to accept. Yet Hyunwoo was unusually cheerful, basking in happiness all day long. Indeed, he had secretly harbored feelings for Haisu all along. Just then, Henny arrived to bring him a drink. She wanted to express her gratitude for yesterday's kindness, because she was the daughter of his first love. Hyunwoo found Henny increasingly adorable. "If you ever face any difficulties in the future, you must tell me, okay?" Naturally, Henny also adored this smiling, handsome homeroom teacher. She felt fortunate to have met Hyunwoo. But the next day, while having lunch with classmates, she unexpectedly spotted her grandmother at school. She was chatting with Hyunwoo. Clearly, they knew each other long before. From her grandmother's shocked and concerned expression, Henny suddenly had a bold guess. Haisu had been caught by creditors that day, facing having her hand chopped off. This scene often haunted her dreams. Debt problems had her overwhelmed, pondering excuses to give the creditors even while walking. Hyunwoo had already been waiting for her at the intersection. Seeing her, he bounced over to greet her, but Haisu walked right past him, completely oblivious to his presence. He quickly followed behind, careful not to disturb her. Noticing her attention wasn't on the road, Hyunwoo stepped ahead, warning pedestrians to avoid obstacles so she wouldn't collide with them. Haisu was in her own turmoil, torn between confronting the creditor or seeking out her ex-boyfriend. Suddenly, she overheard voices ahead, chatting with Hyunwoo. She learned there was a parent-teacher meeting for her daughter today, yet her daughter hadn't told her. But when she arrived at the school, she found the other parents were exceptionally snobbish, naturally isolating her. Her mother called to scold her for missing the meeting, worried she'd be mocked by others. It had been like this every time she attended over the years. Just as Haisu was about to explain to her mother, she suddenly spotted the creditor arriving at the school. This frightened her so much she stammered and hung up the phone. Her mother mistakenly assumed the other parents had bullied her daughter. Meanwhile, Haisu had already charged forward with a mop, bravely blocking Jaewon's path. Convinced he'd come for her daughter, she demanded Jaewon leave immediately. Haisu exclaimed heatedly, "Whether you want me to beg the writer on my knees or you want to chop off my hand, we'll deal with that later. Please don't come barging into my daughter's school like this." What Haisa never expected was that Jack, the boy being bullied at school, was actually Jaewon's son. Jaewon had only come to attend the parent-teacher meeting. He wondered how Haisa knew Jack, but at Jack's request, Haisu only said the two children were good friends. Worried about Haisu, the mother rushed to attend the meeting herself. During the meeting, she promised to invite renowned writer Miho to give a speech. Haisu then noticed all the parents were inexplicably respectful toward her, but upon learning of her mother's promise, she nearly broke down. She was already planning to ask Miho to sign her script. Now she had to invite him to speak, and he was her ex-boyfriend. After storming out in fury, an even bigger surprise awaited her. Her mother ran into Hyunwoo, whom she hadn't seen in years, and invited him over for dinner. During their conversation at home, she learned Hyunwoo was looking for a place to move to save her daughter rent money. She actually planned to rent out the empty room to Hyunwoo. Miho wrote his ex-girlfriend into his novel, portraying her as a despicable villainess. Unexpectedly, the novel became wildly popular, and Miho shot to fame as a best-selling author. He was the very writer Haisa sought. Haisa never imagined Miho was her ex-boyfriend Younghyuk's pen name. Their reunion felt excruciatingly awkward, yet Younghyuk had waited 14 years for this moment. Back then, Haisa's sudden withdrawal from school and breakup had devastated him, leaving him in agony. He ultimately dropped out before graduation and wrote that novel, all to become famous and find Haisu again. Now Haisu had actually come looking for him, even requesting he adapt the novel into a movie. Younghyuk naturally refused, and only gave her 2 tickets to an author's meet and greet. Miho finally felt vindicated in front of Haisu. He sought out his friend Taejun to vent his vengeful satisfaction. Upon hearing Haisu had finally appeared, Taejun felt a sense of unreality. Yet after listening to Younghyuk's account, he felt somewhat unhappy. He merely sighed that Haisa had changed so much. In their past relationship, she would never have been so submissive. This remark struck Younghyuk the deepest, for Haisu hadn't changed. He didn't tell Taejun what happened next. After leaving, he had barely stepped out of the elevator, and hadn't even had time to laugh before Haisa came running down the stairs. In the end, it was he who begged Haisa to accept the book club tickets. Haisu, who had been ready to give up, suddenly learned from a colleague that the female lead in the novel shared all her habits. Even the novel's title was a homophone for Haisa's name, so she stayed up all night reading the novel. It was clearly written about her. And so, on the day of the author's sharing session, Haisu ended up sitting in the audience to find out why she was abandoned. Younghyuk deliberately called on Haisu to interact. "If you were the male lead in the novel, how would you feel?" Haisu answered that she would feel terrified. Everyone agreed, but Haisu clarified that she believed the male lead was the one who should feel terrified. "You say that woman took everything from you. Perhaps it was you who took everything from that woman." Walking alone on the street, Haisu felt both heartbroken and furious. Back then, it was clearly her who had been abandoned. She had seen Younghyuk kissing someone else with her own eyes. Why was he coming to hurt her again now? And just as she absent-mindedly crossed the street, she fainted. The person getting out of the car behind her was none other than her creditor. Jae-hwan, who nearly hit Haisu, wanted to compensate her adequately. Haisu demanded he wipe out all her debts. Then she hurriedly left the hospital. She intended to return and try again with the writer, but the reading club had ended. The sudden rain made her even sadder. But when she looked up, Younghyuk appeared before her. Having lived with her mother and grandmother since childhood, Henny had also wondered where her father went, but she realized asking would only hurt her mother. So every birthday, she wished for herself to stop being so curious. Henny had almost forgotten about her father, yet she discovered her grandmother and teacher were close. Overhearing them say they hadn't seen each other in 14 years. Wasn't that precisely the year she was born? Coincidentally, Hyunwoo was coming over for dinner today. Grandmother asked Henny to fetch new tableware from the attic. Among the old items that accidentally fell out were things from her mother's college days. Henny gazed curiously at her mother's youth. One diary caught her attention. Its title read, "Letter to My Future Child." She carefully opened the cover and discovered that where her father's signature should have been, It was instead signed, Teacher Hyunwoo. Henny looked at the man outside the door, unsure if he was her father. At that moment, she desperately wanted to know who her father really was. During dinner, she seized the chance to probe Hyunwoo's habits, what he liked and disliked to eat, testing the nature of his relationship with her mother. But she noticed Grandma constantly obstructing her. Just as her suspicions deepened, Grandma agreed to rent the room to Hyunwoo. This left Henny utterly bewildered. After all, Grandma would never hurt Mom nor rent the room to Dad. Henny couldn't help but ask Hyunwoo about his past relationship with her mother. Hyunwoo replied, "She's the one who made me take responsibility for her." To get a definitive answer, Henny prepared a series of questions to interrogate Hyunwoo. She even enlisted Jack as her helper. Thus, the two began their plan to find her father. Jack suggested getting a DNA test to uncover the truth. Henny backed away immediately upon hearing it would cost hundreds of thousands of won. With no other choice, they resorted to physical investigation. Henny dug out her mother's university-era phone to search for clues, yet the call log contained only one number. After verification, it wasn't Hyunwoo's. The search for her father was temporarily halted. Meanwhile, Tae-jun, snacking in the break room, suddenly received an unknown call, but upon answering, the caller remained silent. Shortly after, he received a text message. Haesoo first tracked down the writer's agent and informed them of the copyright contract left by her boss. She refused to accept the penalty for breach of contract and instructed them to relay that she had also contributed to the novel's creation. At the author's sharing session, faced with Miho's shameless provocation, Haesoo immediately shut him down, leaving him speechless. This left Miho feeling bewildered for the first time. He had always believed himself to be the victim in the relationship, unilaterally blaming Haesoo for the breakup. Now he was curious about the real reason behind their breakup. This led to their reunion, when Haesoo proposed Miho become the film's screenwriter. Miho countered by asking where she had been for the past 14 years. Haesoo seized the moment to secure his agreement to collaborate. She promised to reveal the reason for their breakup during their time working together. Deep down, Miho desperately wanted to accept, yet in Haesoo's presence, his confidence crumbled. Driven by pride, Miho burst into laughter. He declared he was now star writer Miho, no longer the penniless Younghyuk. So even without knowing the breakup reason, it didn't matter. He contemptuously demanded Haesoo beg him for the contract. Perhaps he might pity her and agree. But these words naturally enraged Haesoo. Now she no longer hoped to collaborate with Miho. He would never know the reason for their breakup. Watching Haesoo storm off in anger, Miho also fell deep in thought. He only wished Haesoo would submit to him. For these 14 years, his greatest goal had been to prove abandoning him was Haesoo's mistake. Haesoo, having abandoned the collaboration with Miho, now needed to find other ways to repay her debts. But even working non-stop at side jobs, it would take 43 years to clear her loans. As for loans from certain institutions, they're merely tools for the wealthy. They wouldn't offer a helping hand to someone as destitute as her. The only one who might still worry about her survival at this moment was that cold-faced creditor. Jae-hwan came to the company to find Haesoo today, only to discover the landlord had repossessed the apartment due to unpaid rent. And he genuinely began to worry about Haesoo, because the moment he first saw her, he realized she looked exactly like his late wife. The words Haesoo spoke in the hospital were the same ones Jae-hwan had heard from his wife. Receiving a call, Haesoo had no choice but to return to the company to meet the creditor. She intended to confess and propose an alternative repayment plan. But Miho, who came looking for her, caught her off guard. She hadn't wanted her ex-boyfriend to see her in such a desperate state. Now Miho knew about her debts and relentlessly criticized her recklessness. So Haesoo decided to stop hiding and revealed she wouldn't be filming Miho's movie. This actually surprised Jae-hwan. Deep down, he didn't want Haesoo to give up, but Haesoo simply couldn't bring herself to beg Miho. After confirming the repayment schedule, she left. Yet these two unrelated men unexpectedly lingered. Miho remarked, "At least our relationship is closer than yours." Jae-hwan countered, "Even if you're closer to her, you can't trust her." His words stabbed Miho's heart. After returning home, Miho remained conflicted. He couldn't comprehend Haesoo's dire living situation, nor why her pride was so unyielding. But Haesoo knew none of this. Returning home, she discovered her mother had secretly rented her room to her daughter's homeroom teacher. Her mother even wanted to set them up. The chaos overwhelmed Haesoo. As an unwed mother, she was already constantly subjected to gossip. Now, A man was suddenly coming and going from her home, and crucially, he was her teacher, her junior from elementary school. He was also the man who had once wanted to be her daughter's father. All she wanted to do was run away, but she understood her mother's intentions were good. After adjusting her mindset, Haisu agreed to her mother's plan. Early the next morning, she was already preoccupied with debt issues when she happened to run into Hyunwoo in front of the store. Haisu apologized for her attitude yesterday. Unexpectedly, Hyunwoo comforted her instead and even gave her a lucky candy. After eating the candy, Haisu was just preparing to face life positively when a call from her agent interrupted her. Knowing she had Miho's old contract, the agency wanted her to transfer it, but they belittled her, saying she wasn't worthy of producing such a great script. Just then, Miho suddenly arrived and agreed to hand over his novel for Haisu to produce. But Haisu was unexpectedly furious. She thought Miho was just toying with her again. "You show up again when I'm at my worst. How long do you plan to keep tormenting me?" This time, however, Miho was serious and explained it wasn't out of pity. Unlike 14 years ago, this time Haisu took Miho's hand. Hyunwoo watched this scene with obvious displeasure. The drenched Haisu made an excuse to go to the restroom to tidy up, leaving the two behind as she turned and walked away. Initially, Hyunwoo was enthusiastic, thanking Miho for agreeing to give a lecture at the school. But when he realized Miho's boastful and possessive tone when mentioning Haisu, he grew furious. The next moment, Hyunwoo gave Miho a stern lecture. On the way home together, Haisu ranted nonstop about Miho, listing all his bad habits. But this only made Hyunwoo feel worse. He asked Haisu what her relationship with the writer was. This topic made Haisu somewhat awkward after all. She didn't want to bring up her ex-boyfriend. When Miho's school lecture came up, Haisu actually asked Hyunwoo to find someone else to attend. She didn't want Miho to give the lecture. Hyunwoo pressed her, asking if there was another reason. Though he sensed she was hiding something, he agreed to her request. But as soon as they turned around, his mother spotted them, assuming they were out on a date. Henny stood nearby, eyes wide. She still hadn't given up on finding out who her biological father was. Looking at Taejun's online profile, she wondered if the person who answered the phone was him, so she tentatively asked her mother if she had any romantic interests in her youth. After receiving an affirmative answer, she hurriedly asked if the person was younger than her. Haisu, however, accused her daughter of having a boyfriend. Henny went to great lengths to find her biological father. She and her friends secretly saved money by selling bottles, all to afford the DNA test. As for her mother's old phone, Henny had given up hope, but Jack found a clue. He believed that even if he wasn't her father, he might at least know something. Jack encouraged Henny to call and ask. Just then, her mother's close friend suddenly appeared. Fearing her search for her father would be exposed, Henny decisively used Jack as a shield. The man on the phone was none other than the celebrity Taejun. His company was planning to send him to Hollywood for development. After suddenly receiving Henny's text, he learned that Haisu had a 14-year-old daughter. For a moment, he too was flustered. Years ago, when Haisu and Miho's relationship faltered, she sought solace with her close friend Taejun. Watching Haisu weep inconsolably, he felt both heartbroken and consumed by jealousy. But the intoxicated Haisu, lost in venting her resentment toward Miho, didn't hear him. Two broken souls, drunk and drenched in the pouring rain, found themselves in each other's arms. What happened next remained a mystery to all. When Taejun awoke the next morning, Haisu had left only a note. Thus, he believed Henny might be his daughter. Just then, Henny called. They agreed to meet at a location that evening. Henny felt that regardless of the outcome, tonight would inevitably require choosing one person between the teacher and the celebrity. But today was the day for the celebrity lecture. Grandmother had previously guaranteed writer Miho's attendance. Now, Haisu had suddenly backed out at the last minute. With no replacement prepared, she faced criticism from waiting parents. To shield her mother from further attacks, Henny urgently contacted celebrity Taejun. He was heading to a shoot but hesitated, choosing between his career prospects and the sudden appearance of his daughter. Ultimately, his conscience won out. He ditched his agent and rushed to the school. Meanwhile, Miho sought out Haisu. Through a colleague, he learned Haisu had never married. For all these years, she had been a single mother, raising her daughter alone for 14 years. Instantly, a bold suspicion took root in his mind. If she hadn't married, the origin of her daughter was obvious. Miho not only agreed to be the screenwriter but also applied for the director's position. When creditors sought Haisu's opinion, she surprisingly trusted Miho's ability and agreed to let him direct. Now, The only remaining task was to cast Taejun as the lead, and Taejun just happened to be connected to the writer. Watching Haeseo smile exceptionally brightly, Miho felt like he'd slipped back in time. He realized he was falling for Haeseo again when he went to deliver the script to Haeseo that night. Seeing the sleeping woman before him, Miho was once more captivated by her beauty. Haeseo unconsciously grasped his hand, sending a sudden surge of emotion through him. Miho quickly fled outside, struggling to calm himself. Then voices echoed from the staircase. It was Hyunwoo bringing Henny to deliver food to Haeseo, who was working late. Seeing the happy family scene, Miho mistakenly assumed they were married. Heartbroken, he walked down the street, regretting why he had reunited with Haeseo. Why had he fallen for her again? Now it was all too late. Taejun received a call from Henny and hurried to meet her at school. The moment they met, Henny accused him of abandoning her, but all this was merely Taejun's imagination. Henny was actually pleading for his help to resolve her mother's predicament. Haeseo had promised to invite Miho for a school lecture, but then abruptly informed everyone he wasn't invited. Feeling deceived, parents cornered her at the entrance. Meanwhile, Miho arrived at the school and sternly pulled Haeseo to the rooftop. Haeseo demanded why he kept suddenly appearing. Miho replied, "I've lived quietly for 14 years. You barged into my world and shook my heart." Hyunwoo followed to defend Haeseo, which only infuriated Miho further. He couldn't stand the sight of this man causing misunderstandings. Haeseo, caught in the middle of their conversation, grew distressed and first persuaded Hyunwoo to leave. Miho asked where Haeseo's husband had gone. Haeseo replied her husband was dead and warned him never to mention it. This answer caught Miho off guard. He'd assumed Haeseo was unmarried, meaning he must be the father of her daughter. Taejun's dashing appearance also soothed the parents' resentment. But as he finished his lecture and prepared to leave, Haeseo suddenly rushed forward and blocked his car. To conceal the reason for their visit, Taejun impulsively agreed to play the male lead. This thrilled Haeseo so much she forgot to ask Taejun why he was there. Finally resolving the creditor's two demands, Haeseo could pursue her producer dream again. That night, she invited colleagues to celebrate, but her colleagues seemed to misunderstand her intentions. Soon, she gathered 3 men connected to her together, though unaware they were rivals for her affections. Their clashing personalities made the atmosphere awkward. Haeseo remained unaware they all harbored feelings for her. To her, these men were simply too much to handle. Yet, she ended up getting herself drunk. The men had to figure out how to get her home. As they reached the door, Hyunwoo appeared. Haeseo's mother also came out. Seeing the intoxicated Haeseo, Hyunwoo scooped her up without a word and carried her inside. The men watched, utterly bewildered. Haeseo's mother marveled at her daughter's charm. These men, usually big shots in their respective fields, were acting exceptionally well behaved around Haeseo's mother. Meanwhile, Haeseo, still drunk, suddenly grabbed Hyunwoo by the collar. Seeing Haeseo so close made Hyunwoo's heart nearly leap out of his chest. Startled, he quickly stood up and straightened his clothes. The next day, Haeseo had completely forgotten about the previous night, but her mother and sister were more than happy to jog her memory. Recalling her embarrassing behavior the night before, she wished the ground would swallow her whole. As if fate had other plans, she ran into Hyunwoo on her way to work. She asked him if she had been rude the previous night. Seeing Hyun was hesitant, stammering response, Haeseo knew something was definitely off. She apologized profusely and promised she'd find a way to make it up to him. After leaving Miho's office, a sudden downpour began. Just then, Miho thoughtfully offered her an umbrella. After all, he used to pick her up from school. Only back then, he was more reckless. The umbrella he used to shield her was a bit too large. They'd scramble around, drenched and embarrassed, amid the shopkeeper's curses. But the approaching bus interrupted Haeseo's recollection. To make it up to Hyunwoo, Haeseo agreed to watch a movie together, but Hyunwoo spent the entire time staring at her. Haeseo's every movement left Hyunwoo completely spellbound. He couldn't bear to wait any longer. While waiting for the bus at the station, just as Haeseo was about to answer Miho's call, Hyunwoo suddenly grabbed her. Hyunwoo immediately confessed his feelings to Haeseo. Miho witnessed the entire scene. Furious, he suddenly started causing trouble. This distraction made Haeseo forget Hyunwoo's confession, focusing instead on cursing the passing vehicle. Only when she saw the hopeful look on Hyunwoo's face did she remember his confession, but she didn't know how to respond. Hyunwoo didn't press her for an answer. He gave Haeseo the diaries he'd kept all these years, telling her she could read them whenever she wanted. Taejun, who secretly loved a single mother, gave up his chance to go to Hollywood. But this angered his company's leadership. Minister Song wanted to smash her agent to pieces. How could he handle such a big matter without informing her beforehand? Taejun took all the blame and personally informed reporters he wouldn't go to Hollywood. Knowing she couldn't change Taejun's decision, Minister Song approached Haesoo. She demanded Haesoo cast her preferred leading lady or she'd never approve Taejun's participation. Otherwise, Haesoo would have to compensate for the lost Hollywood opportunity. Everyone knew the list of actresses Minister Song provided was deliberately difficult. Any one of them was a top-tier star. Taejun was ready to confront Minister Song himself. But Haesoo didn't want to cause him trouble. As the others began to lose hope, Haesoo didn't see it as a bad thing. After all, it could benefit the film itself. She was determined to fight for it. Privately, though, she knew how incredibly difficult this would be. Still, she forced herself to stay strong. Meanwhile, the others started discussing their options. Taejun felt deeply guilty that his actions had put Haesoo in such a predicament. Jaehwan took responsibility, suggesting they simply replace the male lead if he changed his mind. Amid their argument, Miho suddenly claimed the blame himself. He declared he'd handle the problem, brusquely telling the others to stay out of it. But he seemed to forget Jaehwan's profession. Ultimately, the issue with the female lead was resolved. Miho not only contacted the celebrity Yalan, but she also agreed to meet with them. This instantly relieved Haesoo of her worries. However, Yalan had her reasons for agreeing. She recognized Miho as the person she had secretly admired in high school. Only, Miho already had a girlfriend. Now, she wanted to get close to Miho under a new identity. But when she joyfully anticipated their reunion, she discovered Haesoo was still by Miho's side. Fortunately, when asked about their relationship, Haesoo replied they were merely work partners. This slightly eased Yalan's mind. Still, she didn't want Miho surrounded by an ex-girlfriend. Later, at an event, she hinted Miho should replace Haesoo with a more suitable producer. Considering her status as a top-tier star, this small request shouldn't be difficult. Yet Miho firmly refused. During Taejun's lecture, classmates egged him on to share stories about his first love in college. Just then, Haesoo entered the classroom. Henny was startled to see the complex look in Taejun's eyes as he gazed at her mother. Ryujin even stated, "If it weren't for her, I wouldn't be an actress today." Watching her mother and Taejun exchange glances, Henny's suspicions about Taejun only deepened. The next day, Henny contacted Taejun again and sent him her mother's old text message records. But Taejun's phone had been smashed. His agent happened to arrive with the repaired phone and saw the incoming message first. He nearly wet himself in shock. This was too much for him to handle, so he decided to eliminate the problem. Henny suddenly received a call from Taejun. She thought this time she'd finally get answers. But when she excitedly answered, she was told never to contact Taejun again. Henny never imagined her hopes would be crushed so brutally. But when she tearfully dialed back, the line went dead. Meanwhile, Taejun was convinced Henny was his daughter. His agent urged him to pretend ignorance, otherwise his entire career would collapse. After dismissing the agent, Taejun was consumed by anxiety. His only thought was how to explain this to Henny. Henny stood frozen in place, numb with grief. Only when Taejun's call came did her emotions finally spill out. That evening, Henny went to talk to her teacher but found the room empty. On the desk, however, she discovered a notebook. It was identical to the one her mother kept in the attic. It too bore the words, "To my future child." Henny opened it, puzzled. The cover listed parents, Haesoo and teacher's name. But there was a difference. An extra line at the top read, "University course for future parents." This was too much for Henny to process. Just then, the teacher returned and picked up the notebook Henny had dropped. Henny asked what it was, but the teacher dismissed it, saying it was just his old university thesis. But when he turned to the page with the parents' names, he suddenly understood Henny's thoughts. Meanwhile, Jack followed Henny home every day. Haesoo could only escort Jack home at night. She urged him not to come home so late in the future, or his mother would surely worry. Jack suddenly grew somber and said he didn't have a mother. Just then, a car approached from the distance. Haesoo instinctively shielded Jack in her arms. Only then did she realize the man getting out of the car was Jack's father. Seeing his son still cold toward him, Jaehwan sighed helplessly. He also asked Haesoo why she was out so late. Before Haesoo could explain, Jack stepped in front of her. This was the third time he'd defended her in front of his father. Their bond was stronger than their outward warmth toward others. The two single parents found themselves unexpectedly connecting. Jae-hwan admitted he hadn't been a good father. Behind his formidable public persona as a debt collector lay a man who'd never mastered fatherhood. Hae-soo reassured Jae-hwan that one day Jack would understand he was a good person. She suggested Jae-hwan attend the school's general parent-teacher meeting so he could meet more parents. This remark reminded Jae-hwan of his late wife again. He abruptly ended the conversation. This left Hae-soo feeling quite frustrated. But the next day, Jae-hwan proactively visited her and delivered the collected actress profiles, hoping to help Hae-soo secure the lead role. But a colleague informed him the lead role had already been filled. Disappointed, Jae-hwan took the materials back. He complained to his assistant about being too late. His assistant naturally didn't understand what he was talking about. Unexpectedly, Jae-hwan announced he would attend the parent meeting. Thus, a handsome middle-aged man appeared among the group of mothers, though the surrounding mothers were captivated by his appearance. It turned out that precisely because he was too handsome, he was elected as the representative for the general parent meeting. The mothers expressed their willingness to be led by him. This outcome was entirely unexpected for Jae-hwan. Left with no choice, he proposed Hae-soo as the vice representative. It turned out Minister Song's son was bullying Jack again. Upon learning Hae-soo had become the vice representative, Henny and Jack were overjoyed. However, Jack's enthusiasm waned considerably when he discovered the representative was his father. That day, Yalin was finally set to collaborate with the writer he secretly admired. He was shocked to discover the producer was the writer's ex-girlfriend. Though Hae-soo and Miho were strictly professional partners, this didn't ease Yalin's unease. Yalin sought Miho during the dinner party, hoping to switch to a more seasoned producer. But Miho suddenly grew serious, insisting he believed Hae-soo was capable of handling the job. Meanwhile, Hae-soo remained unaware of the tension. Attending her first celebrity gala, everything around her felt novel and exciting. She regretted not bringing her daughter to see her favorite boy band. Instead, she opened a video call to let her daughter experience the moment vicariously. She happened to spot Yalin, who had just been rebuffed by Miho. Hae-soo rushed over to greet her warmly, but Yalin brushed her off, causing Hae-soo to collide with a waiter and fall. This was certainly not Yalin's intention. Just as Yalin panicked and reached to help Hae-soo up, Miho pushed through the crowd, appeared, and draped his jacket over Hae-soo. Without once glancing at Yalin, he embraced Hae-soo and left the scene. Hae-soo, however, was more concerned about Yalin and struggled to return to comfort her. Miho pointed out her disheveled state, asking why she was worrying about others now. Not wanting the newly confirmed female lead Hae-soo to misunderstand, she invoked their contract to rebuke Miho for meddling. Her ex-boyfriend from 14 years ago suddenly confessed his feelings, but Hae-soo only paused in surprise before bursting into laughter. She refused to believe Miho, who'd resented her for years, would suddenly claim he still loved her. She warned Miho not to joke around. Meanwhile, Hyun-woo, the chaebol heir, was asked by his mother to attend tonight's banquet. He suddenly spotted Hae-soo leaving, but before he could confirm, his mother had already noticed him. Rarely did her son obey and attend an event. Excited, she pulled him out to introduce him, but upon seeing Miho and Yalin, Hyun-woo realized Hae-soo was here too, confirming his earlier sighting wasn't a mistake. He caught up to Hae-soo in the hall, lying that he'd come to meet a friend. Despite her protests, he insisted on walking her home. Their intimate departure was witnessed by his mother, who had followed them out. The next day, Hae-soo met with Yalin's boss to discuss a contract. She noticed the woman ahead had a tear in her dress. After encountering the woman again in the restroom, she pointed out the issue with her dress, and even pulled out the sewing kit she carried with her to quickly mend the garment. Unexpectedly, the woman she helped turned out to be Yalin's boss, the very person she was scheduled to meet. Unbeknownst to her, this woman was also Hyun-woo's mother. Hae-soo apologized for leaving abruptly the previous night, explaining she had to attend to an urgent matter. But upon hearing she had also attended last night's party, Mrs. Min suddenly recalled the scene of her son leaving. She suspected Hae-soo might be the woman from last night. When they learned Hae-soo had a 14-year-old daughter, both Mrs. Min and Yalin suddenly became excited. Even on the way back, when the agent spoke ill of Hae-soo, Yalin felt uncomfortable. Miho confessed his feelings to his ex-girlfriend again, only to be ruthlessly rejected. He was even warned not to make such jokes in the future. This left Miho deeply frustrated. How could you laugh during such a serious, romantic confession? Is that polite? But Yalin, who had rushed over, was even more upset. She hadn't expected Haisu to fall either. With her brain the size of a walnut, she never would have thought of such a tactic. Miho told her not to worry about it and asked if she was frightened. After all, Yalan was the female lead he had signed. Just then, Yalan's boss arrived with his son to introduce him to everyone. Miho's family was stunned to discover it was Hyunwoo. He hadn't realized Hyunwoo's family was so wealthy. This made competing for Haisu even harder. Already rejected, he felt even more troubled. So he called his good friend Taejun that night to vent his romantic woes. Miho's story was heartrending, and he longed for Taejun's comfort and advice. Yet Taejun's mood wasn't much brighter than Miho's. He was still fretting over how to reunite with his daughter. Learning Miho still liked Haisu wasn't exactly good news for him. He made an excuse and left immediately. Miho arrived at Haisu's doorstep, only to find Hyunwoo stepping out. He actually asked Hyunwoo to call Haisu out, but Hyunwoo already disliked him and told him to go home and sleep it off. Miho abandoned his search for Haisu and followed Hyunwoo to the baseball field. Standing nearby, he made sarcastic remarks that successfully drew Hyunwoo's attention. He demanded to know why Hyunwoo had pretended to be penniless to sneak into Haisu's house and what his true intentions were. Without hesitation, Hyunwoo declared his feelings for Haisu. He asked Miho why he always picked on Haisu, facing such a formidable opponent. Miho had no reason to back down. He declared he wanted to reconcile with Haisu. Hyunwoo knew Haisu had dropped out because of her pregnancy. He also knew how deeply heartbroken she'd been at the time, so he'd long harbored a deep hatred for the man who'd hurt Haisu. The two men ended up wrestling each other to the ground. The next morning, Miho woke up early, puzzled by why things had turned out this way. He'd clearly failed at his confession, yet everyone seemed gloomy. His body ached all over, and he suspected Hyunwoo must have been beaten into the hospital. But Hyunwoo only had a minor cut on his lip, and Haisu was helping him apply medicine. Miho had the advantage of working together, yet he noticed Haisu kept avoiding him. Miho chased after her, demanding the reason for the breakup. Using the excuse of revising the novel's script, he wanted to remind Haisu how deeply they had loved each other. Haisu claimed the breakup was just an excuse to trick him into signing the script, but Miho knew she was lying. If you truly forgot the past, why do you still hate me so much? Henny's flyer fell in the middle of the road. A motorcycle sped toward her, seemingly blind to the hazard. Terrified, she froze, unable to dodge. But Miho and Hyunwoo, standing by the roadside, saw it. Both men sprinted toward Henny like madmen. Still working overtime, Haisu battled a jammed printer. Just then, Taejun arrived at the office to find her. He gathered his courage to speak, only to be interrupted by a call from the hospital. They rushed there immediately, only to find Henny tending to Miho. Seeing this, Taejun was utterly baffled. But when Henny spotted him, she stormed off angrily. He hurried after her, asking if she was hurt. Realizing she still resented him, Taejun hastily apologized for his agent's words. Just then, Haisu arrived, frantically asking if her daughter was hurt. Henny replied that it was the uncle who was injured. It turned out Miho had arrived just in time to shield Henny during the crisis. Though he'd cut his hand, Henny was unharmed. Upon learning Miho had saved her daughter, Haisu took her daughter home without even glancing at Miho. This left the injured Miho even more heartbroken. In the past, even a minor scrape from him would send Haisu into a panic. Now she didn't even ask. Meanwhile, Haisu hesitated over a thank you text she'd already drafted. After much deliberation, she still didn't send it. Tonight, sleep was destined to elude everyone. Hyunwoo had also seen the danger Henny was in, but it was Miho who rushed over. This plunged him into deep self-reproach. Meanwhile, Taejun returned home and found himself deeply pondering Henny's words. He had known Haisu before Miho did. He noticed her on the very first day of school. He was the first to develop feelings for Haisu. Back then, he had almost kissed her. As a newcomer, he was nervous during his interview, and it was Haisu who encouraged him and cheered him on. He was also the first to feel heartbroken because of Haisu. He had to offer them blessings while holding back tears. But now, with opportunity knocking again, he resolved to stop retreating. When he saw Miho about to touch the sleeping Haisu, he stepped in without hesitation. This time, he would reclaim everything he'd lost. Miho blamed Taejun for not keeping the secret to the grave, while the woman at the center of their argument was flipping through a pregnancy diary. Only then did Haisu realize her daughter had always longed for a father. Hyunwoo pleads for a chance for both her and himself. He now believes he can care for his family, but no matter what, that man cannot be Henny's father. Before Haisu could refuse, the man suddenly appeared. Miho, drunk as a skunk, was helped out of the car by Yalan and his agent. Only then did they realize Miho had given Haisa's address. Miho was overcome with emotion upon seeing Haisu. Haisu felt a faint pang of pity. Fortunately, Hyunwoo promptly stopped Miho from making a scene, preventing further awkwardness. The next day, a sober Miho watched Animal World on TV. He suddenly realized that to win Haisa's heart, he must take the initiative to prevail among the others. So when Haisu was about to head to the filming location, he secretly instructed his colleague not to get in the car. Meanwhile, he had already driven ahead. When Haisu realized her colleague hadn't boarded the car, she couldn't reach him at all. Only after transferring to the ferry did she finally get a call. But just as her colleague was about to reveal it was Miho's plan, Haisu's phone suddenly died and shut off. This was all fate orchestrated by the director. Meanwhile, Taejun received a text from Miho saying he would confess to Haisu again today. No matter how many times he confessed, he vowed not to let Taejun take Haisu away. Taejun immediately called Haisu, only to find her phone switched off. After contacting her colleagues, he learned Haisa's schedule for the day. Ignoring his agent's protests, he rushed out. Meanwhile, Hyun-woo, also unable to reach Haisu, was about to come to the company to find her. He happened to learn from a colleague that Haisu had gone alone with the writer to the filming location. Moreover, Miho had secretly arranged for no one else to accompany them. Hyunwoo suddenly sensed something major was about to happen. In an instant, both Hyunwoo and Taejun set off, racing to the port to catch a boat. But they were still a step too late. The boat had just departed. The three could only stare at each other. Yet each knew the other's purpose for being there. But why had Jae-hwan suddenly appeared as well? His reason for coming was complicated this time. He was here to save Haisa's life. Miho's plan to confess to his ex-girlfriend on the island had drawn three rivals who chartered a boat to stop him. His heartfelt confession did indeed stir Haisa's memories of their love. Lost in recollection, they drew closer and closer. Just as they were about to kiss, Haisa suddenly opened her eyes. The face mere inches from hers startled her. Miho prepared to speak tenderly once more, but the village loudspeaker began broadcasting a search for them. When Haisa rushed to the village chief's house, she found all three rivals had arrived neatly in a row. The unexpected visitors immediately demanded to take Haisu away. Miho naturally refused, but as the four argued, the village chief informed them they couldn't leave. Skeptical, they went to the pier only to discover the island had just one boat per day. With no choice, they had to stay in the village overnight. This gave them the perfect chance to persuade the villagers to allow their film to be shot there. To win over the village elders, several elite members from various fields, under Haisa's threat, all obediently changed into work clothes. Haisu didn't even give them time to rest, excitedly urging the village chief to assign tasks immediately. But when the village chief pulled out a long list of chores, Haisu was completely stunned. Still, she gritted her teeth and began assigning work. Jae-hwan was assigned to prepare ingredients simply because Haisu praised his domestic skills. Plus, Haisa thought his knife skills were excellent. The others started scrambling to prove themselves. As for Taejun, being a celebrity meant the village chief's cousin was his fan, so he was sent to shop at her store. Unexpectedly, Taejun shamelessly declared that as a big star, he needed his agent to accompany him. Thus, he had Haisa tag along to the store. Taking advantage of their alone time, Taejun tried to confess his feelings, but Haisu understood his intentions and preemptively stated she was no longer a 23-year-old girl. She was now just a 37-year-old unmarried mother. She was grateful for Taejun's help, yet Haisu's polite refusal didn't deter Taejun. Just as he was about to express his love, a tractor drove by. Haisu couldn't make out a word he was saying. Still, this didn't deter the resilient Taejun. Just as he mustered the courage to confess again, Miho arrived on his bicycle. Haisu had once happily prepared a birthday gift for Miho, but all she got in return was his cold accusation. Furious, she threw the gift down and stormed off. Miho, however, thought she was being unreasonable. After all, he was the one who pursued Haisu first. Yet as Haisu invested more deeply in their relationship, Miho grew careless in his commitment. When Haisu asked when they would marry, he replied he hadn't considered it. But then Haisu discovered she was pregnant. Braving the downpour to confront her boyfriend, she witnessed him kissing another woman. Disillusioned with the relationship, she resolved to terminate the pregnancy. She scoured the internet for hospitals willing to perform the procedure. Waiting for the bus to the hospital, her emotions settled. and regret began to surface. Perhaps what she witnessed wasn't genuine. For the child's sake, she wanted to give her boyfriend one last chance. Tears welling up, she called him, but the phone went unanswered. The text she sent, pleading to meet, remained unread, so she secretly made her way to the hospital. Surrounded by expectant mothers, her heart began to race with anxiety. As she gathered her fallen backpack, she found a diary addressed to her future child. It contained blessings, hopes, and a promise to protect the child. In that moment, Haisa suddenly regretted her decision. She couldn't bring herself to reject the child's birth. Years later, when Miho confessed his feelings again, wanting to know why they'd broken up, Haisa told him to stop bothering her. 14 years ago, she'd been desperate enough to consider death. Now, the outcome wouldn't change. Miho's confession only brought Haisa more pain. Seeking solace at her best friend's bar, she lamented that loving wholeheartedly exacted a cruel price. Yet her friend, observing from the sidelines, remained clear-headed. Even so, she countered, "You can't blame Henny for that cruel price." Haisa's hesitation stemmed from fear that history would repeat itself, fear that Miho would fall for her first, only for their deeper connection to plunge them back into the abyss. Ignoring Miho's protests, Yalan burst into the room. She even brought peanuts and drinks, but not a word about the script. Just as she opened the drink, it unexpectedly sprayed all over her, and her finger was cut by the pull tab. Miho handed her clothes for Yalan to change into. Then he went out to buy medicine for Yalan. Meanwhile, Haisu had come to many realizations and was ready to give Miho another chance. But when she came to find Miho, it was Yalan who opened the door. Yalan said Miho had stepped out and suggested Haisa contact him another day. Haisu immediately insisted she needed to talk to Miho today. While waiting for Miho's return, Yalan confessed she planned to confess her feelings to him tonight. She revealed she'd been in love with Miho for 14 years. This reminded Haisu of that rainy night long ago. Just then, Miho returned with the medicine. Yalan claimed Haisu was ready to leave. Haisu insisted she needed to speak with Miho. After seeing Yalan off, Miho explained they were just discussing a script. Haisu confronted him, questioning whether it was appropriate to be with a woman so late at night. This made Miho feel wronged, but Haisu coldly reminded him that 14 years ago, she had also come to tell him something important. Yet the scene she witnessed back then had left her unable to face him. That day, a girl wearing his clothes had been at his place exactly like today, but Haisu's words left Miho utterly confused. He couldn't recall what happened 14 years ago, so he asked Haisu to explain clearly. Yet Haisu thought he was using time as an excuse. Haisu felt hurt and refused to discuss it further. Miho, unaware of what had happened, let the misunderstanding escalate into an emotional confrontation. Haisu had intended to come and resolve their past grievances with Miho. Instead, she declared she felt no lingering attachment toward him. Miho, unwilling to continue the argument, ultimately told a heartbroken Haisu he would vanish from her life as she wished. Yet the next day, Miho encountered Henny on the street. Seeing her out alone, he grew concerned and followed her to the bar owned by Haisu's best friend. During their conversation, he learned Henny was searching for her father. Henny's words left Miho deeply puzzled. On the way, he recalled Haisu rejecting him, saying she had long considered him dead. Then he remembered his colleague mentioning Haisu had no husband. Piecing it all together, a bold suspicion formed in Miho's mind. Without hesitation, Taejun knelt before Haisu and her mother, begging for their forgiveness. Only then did Haisu realize Taejun had mistaken Henny for his daughter. The next day, Miho also came seeking confirmation if Henny was his daughter. Haisu's mother kept slapping him. She knew best the hardships her daughter had endured over the years. Learning Henny was Miho's daughter left Taejun deeply despondent. Just then, Miho blocked Taejun's path. Without a word, he punched Taejun. Taejun retorted, daring him to confirm he'd loved only Haisu in his entire life. Miho was rendered speechless by the accusation. After Taejun left, Minister Song decided to shift the blame onto Haisu. Enraged, Taejun immediately resolved to terminate his contract with the company. Miho, reeling from successive blows, desperately sought out Haisu for a meeting. After regaining her composure, Haisu recounted what she had witnessed all those years ago. Only then did Miho recall that night when a drunk student had harassed him. He explained it was just a misunderstanding, but in his agitation, he accused Haisu of not listening to him back then. Haisu found Miho's words utterly ridiculous. After calming down, she too had realized it was a mistake, a case of mistaken identity. Yet, whether she called or texted, Miho never responded. Miho claimed he never even knew about the texts or calls. Haisu said none of that mattered, let's just pretend it never happened. Miho angrily accused her of driving him to the brink. Haisu replied that she and her daughter were perfectly fine without him. She turned and went straight to Taejun. Taejun told her he had deleted all of Miho's calls and messages back then. He didn't want Haisu to keep living in pain. Haisu didn't blame Taejun. She knew she and Miho could never have been together. The underachieving girl scored high marks, but the teacher accused her of cheating. The girl realized no matter how hard she tried, she was still a failure in the teacher's eyes. Miho discovered her and scolded her for her wrongdoing. He picked up the half-burned report card and was surprised by her exam scores. The girl thought he would also believe she had cheated. Faced with Miho's genuine praise, she finally smiled. But the moment turned, and she burst into tears. Overcome with sorrow, pulled back from the edge of despair, she found herself inexplicably falling for Miho, yet she discovered Hyunwoo already had a girlfriend. She resolved to suppress this hopeless affection, but on graduation night, drunk and braving the downpour, she went to Miho's dorm to confess her feelings. Miho treated her like a child, handing her dry clothes to change into. He lectured her not to drink late at night, much less visit a man living alone. Watching the only man who cared for her, she couldn't contain her affection. Seeing Miho so angry, she admitted knowing he had a girlfriend, but love struck so suddenly. Miho said he felt for her struggles and understood her lifelong hunger for affection. Yet love isn't a one-sided affection. As the girl left, soaked and heartbroken, she took with her the love that had once belonged to the man. That kiss led Haisu to mistakenly believe they'd broken up. It wasn't until 14 years later that Miho learned he had a daughter. He lingered outside his daughter's school. Hyunwoo reminded him of Haisu's warning. Henny had spent 14 years without her father's presence. Miho's sudden, unplanned arrival would only hurt more people. He understood Hyunwoo was right, but as he prepared to leave, he spotted Henny walking home from school. Miho followed her aimlessly, without purpose or plan. It was simply a father's curiosity about his daughter. After finally watching Henny home, he discovered Haisu's mother had spotted him. Miho confessed his past to Haisu's mother. Back then, Haisu was the only one who believed in his dreams, yet he failed to protect her properly. The aunt asked him if he'd hated his daughter for 14 years, even writing about it to become an author. Afterwards, Miho went to the bookstore, dejected, and bought all his own books. Ignoring others' attempts to stop him, he tore the books to shreds. Taejun woke up from his drunkenness to find his colleague still in his home. He suspected something had happened between them last night, but Yalin just laughed uncontrollably, saying he'd been drunk like a madman last night. Only then did Taejun slowly remember. Last night, he drank with Yalin but ended up getting himself drunk. It was Yalin who brought him home, but he had stained Yalin's clothes. Recalling this, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. But then it suddenly dawned on him that the drunken night with Haisu back then was also his own misunderstanding and wishful thinking. Nothing had ever happened between them. Haisu's note wasn't about their relationship. It was about the sad story Haisu had told that night. Meanwhile, online rumors erupted claiming Taejun and Haisu had a 14-year-old daughter. His attendance at Haisu's film premiere was allegedly because she threatened to expose their daughter. All these rumors were orchestrated by Minister Song to retaliate against Taejun's contract termination. Upon seeing the reports, Haisu panicked and rushed to the school. She knew her daughter would suffer the most. Sure enough, the news that Henny was Taejun's daughter spread rapidly through the school and provoked taunts from some students. Unable to bear the gossip, Henny fled the school only to encounter her mother. Henny had already doubted Taejun was her biological father, and now the news only deepened her conviction. Despite Haisu's explanation that it was a misunderstanding, this was more than a 14-year-old girl could bear. Upon learning the news, Taejun immediately sought to confront Haisu and Henny, but found his home besieged by a swarm of reporters. The agent, upon learning Henny wasn't Taejun's daughter, felt his scalp tingle and his head spin. To protect a girl who wasn't his own, Taejun defied his agency and gave up his chance to break into Hollywood. The agent couldn't fathom Taejun's reasoning. He urged Taejun to go out immediately and clarify the situation, only to be refused. Going out now to explain to reporters would only make Haisu the target of public scrutiny. But at that moment, Haisu pushed open the door, completely oblivious to the surrounding reporters. She mistakenly believed Taejun had leaked the news. The agent hurriedly stepped in to explain. When the public backlash became severe enough to disrupt the film shoot and even mock her daughter into refusing to go to school, Haeseo still didn't let Taejun release the paternity test results. She also refused to let Miho reveal his father's identity. At this point, the original purpose of making the film no longer mattered. She seemed to have forgotten that it was her begging Taejun to make the film that caused his falling out with Minister Song. The public backlash orchestrated by Minister Song would completely destroy Taejun's acting career. As a second-rate producer, her own impact would be fleeting. As for the impact on their daughter Henny, the film had already addressed this at the beginning, though it would cause psychological harm to the child. Transferring schools again would ensure no one would know. Yet after the scandal erupted, Haeseo blamed Taejun for everything. As Henny's biological father, Miho also accused Taejun of failing to protect Haeseo and her daughter. He even claimed Taejun couldn't even control the backlash. When Taejun asked if he could step forward and reveal his identity, Miho didn't dare utter a single word. After abandoning the simplest solution, Haeseo enthusiastically gathered everyone together, yet no resolution emerged. Ultimately, Jaehwan intervened, causing the news site to lose its advertising support. He then dispatched the company's former boss, Kyu Jin, to dine with the news site's administrator. Seizing the opportunity, he recorded the site's dealings with Agent Song. Kyu Jin was the very person who had framed Haeseo years ago, forcing her to sign a 10 billion won debt. Instead of holding him accountable, Haeseo continued collaborating with him. Her justification? Kyu Jin had hired her years ago, enabling her to fulfill her dream of becoming a producer. Ultimately, the news site abruptly shifted its story, exposing Minister Song as the mastermind behind the scheme. Only then was this seemingly simple matter resolved through a convoluted path. Students, learning Henny wasn't Taejun's biological daughter, began taunting her relentlessly. Henny responded by beating one of them senseless. The victim's parents demanded disciplinary action against Henny. When Haeseo rushed to the scene, the parents redirected their humiliating remarks at her. Hyeonwa's rude treatment of Henny finally enraged Miho, who had followed them. To protect Haeseo and his daughter from further bullying, Miho finally admitted he was Henny's father. Henny confronted her mother, demanding why she hadn't revealed the truth sooner. She blamed Miho for not admitting his identity earlier and for not giving her mother a chance to explain. Children cannot comprehend the complexities of the adult world. Likewise, adults often overlook children's feelings. As Henny sat sulking by the front door, Taejun happened to drive by. Henny declared she already knew who her father was. Noticing Henny's emotional turmoil, Taejun wanted to talk with her. He took Henny to the university campus. This was where Taejun, Haeseo, and Miho had all attended school together. He recounted Haeseo's university days to Henny, and shared the story of Miho and Haeseo's love, their shared growth, and the happiness they'd experienced. Finally, he told Henny that Miho had never abandoned Haeseo. After leaving the school, Miho kept apologizing to Haeseo. He hadn't expected his daughter's reaction to be so intense, but Haeseo only wanted him to stop interfering. She wished to be as independent as Wonder Woman and asked Miho to stop meddling in their daughter's affairs. That evening, Haeseo cautiously entered her daughter's room. She sincerely apologized for neglecting Henny's feelings. Henny asked her mother if she regretted giving birth to her. Haeseo replied that even if she could go back in time, she would still choose to have Henny. Then Henny unexpectedly asked if her mother still loved Miho. Before Haeseo could answer, Henny declared she didn't want them together. Faced with her daughter's request, Haeseo chose to agree. By this point, Haeseo knew Miho had been wrongly accused. Essentially, she had misunderstood Miho and then hidden away to give birth to her daughter alone. Yet she never explained any of this to her daughter. It must be said, this drama is truly melodramatic.